Protect your DNA. BioPQQ can promote formation of new mitochondria. Infowarsstore.com.
Welcome back. Yesterday, I published a video called Armed Trannies Attack the NSA, and it was based off news reports that had men dressed up as women who went into a NSA checkpoint in Fort Meade near D.C. in Maryland. And at some point, there was some confusion that erupted. Police opened fire, killed one of the people in the car, and took the other one to the hospital. And in addition, looks like a couple other guards were injured during the melee. What was going on? Well, now we've got a little more clarity on this. Here's from the Washington Post. A fatal wrong turn suspected at NSA. The dark-colored Escape was headed south on Baltimore-Washington Parkway. Its driver, and what authorities believe could have been a mistake, took a restricted exit leading to a security post at the sprawling campus of the National Security Agency at Fort Meade, Maryland. An NSA statement said the driver ignored police commands to stop and instead accelerated toward a police vehicle as at least one officer opened fire. The stolen SUV crashed into a cruiser. One man died at the scene, and the other was taken to the hospital for treatment. An NSA officer was also injured, although officials did not say how. So what it looks like is that the men dressed as women, who I labeled as transgender, which at this point may or may not be true. One thing is for certain, they were cross-dressing, were out partying with a third man at a hotel over on Route 1. At some point in the morning, they decided to go out for a joyride. They took the man's keys, took off, probably made a wrong exit, weren't thinking what they were doing because they had been partying up all night. There was drugs found in the car. Presumably, they were taking those drugs beforehand. I don't know, I'm just making that assumption. And then I want you to look at these maps. So you can see the detail right there. The third photo right there shows the Baltimore-Washington Parkway and the incident of the scene. Now, look right here. So here's the security checkpoint where they came through. It looks like they were trying to turn around and leave when at some point the police probably made some sort of verbal command to stop the car. The guys did not listen. Guys, gals, however they prefer to be called, I don't know at this point. And they were shot. Now, look at this detailed image of the incident. So it's obvious that they were not trying to go up to the NSA because the front right passenger side of the car hit the front right passenger side of the police car. So they were turning, making a break for it around this area. From what it looks like, you can see where the car came to a rest, that's what happened. And then you can see the body bag actually of one of the individuals there who obviously a horrible end to a night of partying. But what does this show? This shows the obvious overreaction of security officers anytime they are approached with something. And I want you to go back in time to about a year ago when we had a woman who was shot by Capitol Police. Here's the CNN article. Woman killed during D.C. chase was shot 5 times from behind, autopsy shows. On October 3rd, Miriam Carey approached a White House checkpoint and was approached by Secret Service officers. She made a 3-point turn, striking an officer who was trying to move a barricade into her path before driving away, according to an affidavit filed in support of a search warrant. Police said the car sped down Pennsylvania Avenue toward the Capitol, where a security vehicle stopped it at Garfield Circle. Carey put the car in reverse, hit a police car, and drove away as officers fired at her. The Office of the District of Columbia Medical Examiner said in an autopsy that one round struck Carey in the left side of the back of her head. She was also hit 3 times in the back and once in her left arm. The report didn't determine in what sequence Carey was hit. Toxicology tests determined that Carey did not have alcohol or drugs in her blood system. But what came out in other eyewitness reports is that police were surrounding her car. They had guns trained on her. She had an infant in the back seat, obviously was concerned for her and her baby's safety, and took off, which looks like happened in this same situation. People get scared when officers start pointing guns at them, and they want to get out of the situation because with the millions of reports that we see, well, let's not exaggerate, the thousands of reports that we see of police pulling guns on people out of nowhere, determining that the citizen is the criminal without, justifying it in any way, shape, or form. We see citizens getting shot by police for little or no reason. Some justified, a lot of others not justified. People being choked out by police. So obviously when people have guns pointed at them, they do tend to freak out and not act in a normal manner. Maybe they aren't listening to commands because they're in a flight or a fight or flight mode, I should say. Now, that's in direct contrast to what we see when the Secret Service drives inebriated into a crime scene. Here's from ABC News. This just happened a couple weeks ago. Secret Service Director Joseph Clancy insists No crash at the White House, no videos erased. The new chief of Secret Service today insisted in recent reports of a crash at the White House by potentially intoxicated agents driving a government vehicle are inaccurate, and he pushed back on any suggestion that the agency deliberately erased surveillance video showing the incident. With several cameras in the area of the White House, video from certain angles of the incident were lost because by practice, the cameras tape over the content every 72 hours, Clancy said. Nothing was deliberately erased. And what do those cameras show? The vehicle, which was containing Secret Service agents, drove through an active crime scene set up after a woman left behind what was considered to be a suspicious package, according to accounts by Cummings and Clancy. That's Elijah Cummings, Democrat from Maryland. The video Clancy has reviewed was saved because of the probe into the suspicious package, not because it related to a subsequent and separate allegations of employee misconduct. So Secret Service agents can come back from a retirement party inebriated, they flash their badges, bump into a barrier, drive into a crime scene, yet nobody freaks out because they're part of the system. They're part of the good guys. Anybody else happens to happen upon one of these, secure facilities, unaware that they are doing it, try to turn around, try to leave the area, well, they're shot at. This is how it happens. There's always selective and different enforcement for if you're a government person than if you're a normal citizen. Case in point, Hillary Clinton. And we're going to get to that in 1 second. And I want to illustrate how this labeling of people, just like I labeled those guys transgender, which may or may not have been accurate. At this point, we don't know. I want to go back to an article just from a couple days ago. Austin police label Infowars engineer sovereign citizen gang member for challenging improper application of traffic law. An arrest record obtained by Infowars shows APD considers the technician to be gang affiliated and a member of a sovereign citizen movement, despite him never having been convicted or arrested on a gang-related charge, nor self-identifying as a sovereign citizen. The contractor's arrest record inexplicably contains notes warning officers that he is a dangerous individual, even though he has no history of violence. Under additional remarks, one of Austin's finest also noted 10-0, caution, sovereign citizen, and there you can scroll down in the article and see the arrest record there. It says dangerous gang intel, and below that additional remarks 10-0, sovereign citizen. So we can see how it's okay for the authorities and government officials to label people as dangerous, even though they aren't really doing anything dangerous other than driving down the road. They happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. But what's obvious is that what Hillary Clinton has done with her emails is a complete violation of the law, and we have a report from Leanne McAdoo to explain that.
There are 4 things I want the public to know. First, when I got to work as Secretary of State, I opted for convenience to use my personal email account, which was allowed by the State Department, because I thought it would be easier to carry just one device for my work and for my personal emails instead of 2.
Nope. Turns out that first statement is a lie. Not only did just weeks earlier Clinton admit to using 2 phones.
The big question, okay. iPhone or Android?
iPhone. Okay, in full disclosure,
BlackBerry.
and a BlackBerry.
The Associated Press obtained State Department documents showing Clinton emailed her staff on an iPad as well. And obviously, an iPad is a lot bigger than a second phone. So Hillary Clinton's excuse that she needed this for convenience shouldn't trump national security. Now, not only do we see Clinton mixing personal and work chats, here she responds to an email update on drone strikes with some interior decorating questions. Plus, it seems like she can't seem to figure out how to use her iPad. Seems competent. Let's make her president.
Second, the vast majority of my work emails went to government employees at their government addresses.
You'll recall that it was actually the hacker, Guccifer, who revealed Clinton's private email address and the fact that she seemed to be running her own secret spy network. 3 men were involved in her private intelligence gathering efforts. They were feeding her intel on, among other things, Benghazi.
What difference at this point does it make?
Now, the State Department pledged that they turned over all documents pertaining to the Benghazi investigation.
We went through a thorough process to identify all of my work-related emails and deliver them to the State Department. At the end, I chose not to keep my private personal emails.
Not only did Clinton set up her own private homebrew email server in order to control the flow of information, but it turns out Clinton actually wiped her server. She admits that she destroyed the electronic copies of her State Department emails on this private server after the State Department subpoenaed those emails.
She basically told the congressional investigators what they could do with their letters and with their subpoenas. She could have taught Richard Nixon a lesson.
So it's definitely not looking good for Hillary that she wiped her server. But then again, we are talking about a woman who was fired from the Watergate investigation for being unethical. Are you ready for Hillary?
So if I'm not ready for someone who tries to cover up the death of 4 Americans and the fact that it's an arms deal for Al-Qaeda, and she runs her own private spy email system, then I'm anti-women? Is that how it works? I guess so. Well, let's move on some more pulling behind the curtain. Here's an article we published today on Infowars.com. Every young person should see the Fed's startling numbers on student debt. This is from Simon Black of Sovereign Man. I'm going to read these statistics out. So 5 of them, and they should really freak you out, especially if you're about to go into college. 40 million Americans are now in debt because of their university education. And on the average, borrowers have 4 loans with a total balance of $29,000. It's like a nice car that you're never going to see, never going to drive, never going to get to look at or show to your friends on Facebook. According to the Fed, student loans have the highest delinquency rate of any form of household credit, having surpassed credit cards in 2012. Since 2010, student loan debt has been the second largest category of personal debt, just after a home mortgage. The delinquency rate of student loans is now hovering near an all-time high since they started collecting the data 12 years ago. And only 37% of total student loan balances are currently in repayment and not delinquent. That's right. 2 out of 3 are either behind payments, in all-out default, or have entered some sort of deferral program delaying their payments, with a small percentages still being in school. Now, that doesn't bode well for you, especially if you're about to go into college, because these numbers are only going to go up. And you cannot get out of this debt even if you declare bankruptcy. If you die, it gets passed on to your relatives, those who co-sign the debt. Your parents would get saddled with it. I mean, it just doesn't look good. And they maneuvered all these things back in the day so they could get more people into the college system, because at the time it was only a place that elites went. But I've got even more information on this. This is out of Consumer Affairs. Student loan debt may be far worse than we thought. Each month, young adults are burdened with 25 to 30% or more of their net pay dedicated to student loan debt. A total outstanding student loan debt in the U.S. has now surpassed $1.2 trillion, with more than 40 million consumers having at least one student loan. And more than 650,000 federal student loan borrowers who began repaying their loans in 2011 have defaulted by 2013. This is creating a huge bubble. This is going to be bigger than the financial bubble. You'll see it's going to hit in probably less than 2 or 3 years. You're going to see massive amounts of students doing what this young lady is doing right now. Out of the Detroit Free Press, students refuse to repay loans to protest college debt. Sarah Diffenbacher is on debt strike. She is refusing to make payments on more than $100,000 in federal and private loans she says she owes for studies at a for-profit college that she now considers so worthless she doesn't even include it on her resume. Diffenbacher said she received an associate's degree in paralegal studies from Everest College in Ontario, California, and later went back for a bachelor's degree in criminal justice before dropping out. She said she left school with about $80,000 in federal loans and $30,000 in private loans, but when she went to apply for a job at a law firm, she was told her studies didn't count for anything. My God, $100,000 and your studies don't account for anything. And it goes on to other students out there who are refusing to repay these loans out of protest because they're receiving worthless degrees. Now, not every degree out there is worthless, and I'm not trying to say that. And college is good for, I'd say more than half the people. But there is a large number of students who are going into college getting these liberal arts degrees. They're getting out. They can't do anything with them. So they are saddled with this college debt, and they're getting jobs as waiters or waitresses. They're in the service industry somehow, and they're unable to repay those loans. Therefore, they're going back, moving in with their parents, It's not the type of scene that you'd like to see in a growing millennial population, but the millennials did do everything from inventing the internet to everything else so gracious with their online personas. So maybe I shouldn't even be cutting them some slack, because they should figure out a way to get through this. I'm tongue in cheek there. I always see articles say how millennials are the next greatest thing. Maybe they are, but they'll never know it because they're so saddled with this debt. But what do they do teach you in college? That's one thing I'd like to know. Kit Daniels put out an article today. University requires students to apply for free speech permits. That's right. They're teaching you that you don't have constitutional rights in this country. The right to free speech, the right to free press, the right to anything. In fact, they've got a whole system outlined for you to apply for permits and what zone you can go talk in, because they don't want you to talk about anything other than their co-sponsored curriculum. The public university, which is California Polytechnic State University, required student Nicholas Thomas, who was handing out flyers, not only to get a free speech permit, but required him to seek approval from school officials over the content of his handouts and to restrict his activity to a campus free speech zone. So they have a whole list of restrictions before you can embark on your free speech, which include you must check in with the Office of Student Life, allow the school to copy their IDs, and wear badges signed by an administrator, reported the Foundation for Individual Rights in Education, who is helping Thomas sue the school. Even then, would-be speakers are regulated to so-called free speech zone, and badges can only be issued from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. on weekdays, although the Office of Student Life pledges to work with any student who wishes to engage in expressive activity on evenings or weekends. Additionally, students must register in advance for outdoor events, and the Office of Student Life must approve all flyers and posters. So that is what they're teaching you, and you're paying for this. You're going into debt to learn how to be a free speech slave, because when you get out and you want to go protest a presidential election or a local official or public servant coming in, they're going to teach you where you can go. They're going to teach you that you can't go in and disrupt any type of open forum. They're going to teach you where and where not you can stand and have your free speech. And they're going to tell you what kind of signs you can have. That doesn't sound like a free republic to me, because it says shall not be infringed at the end of the First Amendment, if I do recall correctly. Totally ridiculous. Now we go to our next story, and then we're going to go to break, and we'll be back with some abortion news, and I'm going to sit down with Anthony Gucciardi to talk about some cancer updates. But here we are from the Daily Mail. Oh my goodness, the Earth is getting greener. Researchers reveal a huge expansion in the world's trees. And what is that expansion due from? It's due from carbon, the evil carbon that we put out. The world's vegetation has expanded nearly 4 billion tons of carbon to plants above ground in the decade since 2003, thanks to tree planting in China, forest regrowth in the former Soviet states, and more lush savannas due to higher rainfall. That must be in Africa and other places. Scientists analyzed 20 years of satellite data and found that the increase in carbon, despite ongoing large-scale tropical deforestation in Brazil and Indonesia, according to research published Monday in Nature Climate Change. The 4 billion ton increase is minuscule compared to the 60 billion tons of carbon released in the atmosphere by fossil fuel burning and cement production over the same period, said Yi Lu, the study's lead author and a scientist at the University of New South Wales. So they always try to throw that in there, even though everything's getting greener because the carbon levels are rising. They want to tell you that's bad. Guess what? The Vikings colonized Greenland back when there was more carbon in the atmosphere and temperatures were warmer, because climate change happens whether we want it to happen or not, because volcanoes are always going to be spewing their ash and the sun is always going to be shining, at least for the next several million years, we predict. But they don't want you to think about that. They want to tell you that breathing's bad. Obama goes to Africa telling you having air conditioning is bad, yet then he gets in his jets. Prince Charles tells you how bad the climate is, then gets in his helicopter to travel 80 kilometers. It's always different for you, because you have to give up your standard of living so the rich and elite can live this beautiful, lush, opulent lifestyle. Now we're going to go to break, and we're going to come back with some abortion news that is I find really disturbing out of New York. And then we're going to sit down with Anthony Gucciardi and talk about the latest developments in the cancer propaganda medical industrial complex. Stay tuned. It's the Infowars Nightly News. I'm your host, Rob Duke.
Used since before the days of the Roman Empire, to support the body's natural systems and enhance overall health. Introducing the new InfoWarsLife.com oil of oregano formulation, a highly advanced nutraceutical form of this key herb that has been traditionally used by civilizations for thousands of years to promote health. We have now procured the most high quality and potent forms of oregano oil on the market, sourced from top leading manufacturers to ensure a concentrated level of bioactive ingredients, extracted directly from the wild herb and sealed in easy-to-use capsules. You will no longer need to endure the burning of liquid oregano on the tongue. Wild crafted from the Mediterranean oregano species that experts agree is one of the most powerful and most challenging to acquire. This winter season, it's more important than ever to secure this true form of oil of oregano. Now available in our limited first run at InfoWarsLife.com. That's InfoWarsLife.com or call 888-253-3139.